October 12th, 1492. Christopher Columbus watches naked people emerge from Caribbean trees. They wear gold jewellery, small pieces, nothing compared to what he promised his investors. But enough. Enough to prove he didn't sail 5,000 miles into oblivion for nothing. His crew hasn't bathed in 33 days. They smell like death, rot and seawater. The Taíno people approach with gifts: parrots, cotton and wooden spears tipped with fish teeth. Columbus plants a flag in sand still warm from their footprints. He claims this island for Spain, for King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, for God. The Taíno watch, smiling, completely unaware that this moment just erased their entire civilization. Within 50 years, 3 million indigenous people will be dead. Their languages, gone. Their cities, burned. Their children, enslaved. Columbus will return to Spain in chains, disgraced, paranoid, convinced he discovered the gates of Eden. But right now, on this beach, he's just a bankrupt sailor from Genoa who spent 10 years begging for money to chase a theory everyone called insane. How does a failed merchant with no formal education convince an empire to gamble on the impossible? And how does discovery become genocide? Cristoforo Colombo walks through Lisbon's port, watching Portuguese ships return from West Africa loaded with gold, ivory and enslaved people. He's 30 years old, a weaver's son from Genoa who taught himself cartography, celestial navigation, and the art of obsessive self-promotion. He married into minor Portuguese nobility, but his wife's family lost everything when her father's sugar plantation in Madeira collapsed. And now, Columbus survives by drawing maps for merchants and reading every travel account he can steal, borrow, or buy. Marco Polo's descriptions of Chipango, Japan, Ptolemy's underestimate of Earth's circumference, Pierre Dailly's Imago Mundi, filled with medieval fantasies about dog-headed men and islands of gold. Columbus studies these texts like scripture. He makes calculations in the margins, adjusting numbers until they prove his theory. If you sail west from Europe, you'll reach Asia, not around Africa, Portugal's route, but straight across the ocean sea. The Atlantic. Most educated people in 1481 know Earth is round. They also know it's massive. The real distance from Spain to Japan? 12,000 miles. Columbus calculates 3,000 miles. He's wrong by 9,000 miles. But he believes his math with religious certainty. Columbus pitches King João II of Portugal. He spreads maps across the royal table, traces his finger from Lisbon to Chipango. 3 weeks, he promises. Maybe 4. We'll reach the Indies before Portuguese ships round Africa. João's Council of Mathematicians examines the proposal. They calculate the actual distance. They tell João that Columbus is either lying or incompetent. Probably both. Rejection. Columbus tries again. And again. Portuguese nobles laugh at the arrogant Italian who can't do basic math. One advisor calls his plan suicide with extra steps. Columbus's wife dies. He's broke, alone, and convinced that Portugal is too cowardly to seize destiny. He moves to Spain with his young son Diego. In Córdoba, Columbus meets Antonio de Marchena, a Franciscan friar obsessed with apocalyptic prophecy. His Marchena believes the end times are approaching, that Christianity must convert the entire world before Christ returns. He sees Columbus not as a navigator, but as an instrument of divine will. Marchena introduces Columbus to influential clerics, who introduce him to nobles, who introduce him to Queen Isabella's confessor. The pitch evolves. Columbus stops emphasizing trade routes. He starts emphasizing souls. Millions of pagans, he tells priests, waiting for salvation. And the gold to fund a final crusade to retake Jerusalem. Still, rejection. Spain's Royal Council reviews his proposal in 1490. Their conclusion: mathematically impossible, theologically unsound, and financially insane. But Columbus won't stop. He demands 10% of all wealth discovered, titles, Admiral of the Ocean Sea, Viceroy of the Indies. These demands insult Spanish nobility. A commoner wants aristocratic titles? Impossible. Spain conquers Granada, the last Muslim kingdom in Iberia. The 800-year Reconquista is complete. King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella are broke. War costs everything. Their treasury is empty. They're expelling Jews, seizing property, desperate for new revenue. Columbus approaches Isabella one final time. This isn't about math anymore. It's about desperation meeting delusion. Isabella sees an option. If Columbus succeeds, Spain gets Asia. If he fails, they lose 3 ships and a crew of criminals. Prisoners recruited from jails with promises of pardoned sentences. She agrees. August 3rd, 1492. 3 ships leave Palos, Spain. The Niña, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. 90 men total. Columbus commands from the Santa Maria, the slowest and leakiest ship in the fleet. His crew includes convicts, teenagers, and sailors who signed on because they couldn't find other work. Martín Alonso Pinzón captains the Pinta. He's an experienced sailor who thinks Columbus is delusional, but believes the voyage might reach unknown islands worth claiming. Vicente Yáñez Pinzón, Martín's brother, captains the Niña. The officers keep 2 logs, one showing the real distance travelled, one showing a fake, shorter distance so the crew won't panic as they sail further than any European has ever gone. They stop in the Canary Islands for repairs, leave September 6th, then nothing but ocean. By September 20th, the crew is terrified. They've sailed 1,000 miles into emptiness. No land, no birds, just waves that seem to stretch into infinity. Sailors whisper mutiny. Columbus promises land within 3 days. But 3 days pass, no land. October 10th, the crew demands they turn back. Officers threaten to throw Columbus overboard. He begs for 3 more days, just 3. If we don't find land by then, we turn around. 2 days later, at 2 a.m. on October 12th, Rodrigo de Triana, a lookout on the Pinta, sees moonlight reflecting off white sand. He screams, "Tierra! Tierra!" Land. They've reached an island the Taíno call Guanahani. Columbus names it San Salvador. He believes he's reached the Indies, islands off the coast of Asia. He's actually in the Bahamas. He's missed Asia by 9,000 miles. But he doesn't know that. And he doesn't care, because the Taíno are wearing gold. Columbus meets the Taíno with interpreters who speak Arabic, assuming they've reached Asian territories under Muslim control. The Taíno don't understand Arabic, or Spanish, or Italian. They communicate through gestures. The Taíno offer food, water, and friendship. They've never seen white skin, beards, or ships with sails. They think the Spanish might be gods. Columbus writes in his journal, "They should make good servants. With 50 men, you could subjugate them all." He's been on the island for 6 hours. The Taíno point south when Columbus asks about gold. Cubanacan, they say, the centre of Cuba. Columbus hears El Gran Khan. Kublai Khan, the Mongol Emperor Marco Polo, wrote about 200 years earlier. He thinks he's days away from meeting the Khan, from accessing the Silk Road, from fulfilling his contract with Spain. For 3 months, Columbus explores the Caribbean. Every island disappoints him. The Taíno have gold, but only small amounts. They get it from riverbeds. There are no mines, no cities, no Khan. On Christmas Day, 1492, the Santa Maria runs aground off Hispaniola, modern-day Haiti and Dominican Republic. The ship is destroyed. Columbus doesn't have enough space on the remaining vessels to bring everyone home. He builds a fort from the wreckage, names it La Navidad, Christmas. leaves 39 men behind with orders to find gold, enslave Taíno for labour, and establish Spain's first colony in the Indies. He takes 6 Taíno captives back to Spain to prove his discovery. 4 die during the voyage. January 16, 1493. Columbus begins his return journey. He's desperate. He hasn't found the Khan, hasn't found significant gold, and hasn't fulfilled any promise he made. But he has proof of land, strange people, exotic birds, and a story he can spin into success. March 15th, 1493. Columbus enters Barcelona, parades through streets displaying his Taíno captives like circus attractions. He presents parrots, gold trinkets, and tales of infinite wealth just waiting to be taken. Ferdinand and Isabella receive him in royal court. They're unimpressed by the gold, but thrilled by the implications. If this is Asia, Spain just outflanked Portugal. If this is something else, Spain just claimed an entire unknown world. Columbus is granted everything he demanded: titles, wealth, authority, and funding for a second, much larger expedition. But what Columbus found and what Spain expects don't align, and that disconnect is about to kill millions. Chapter 2. The Return. September 25th, 1493. Columbus returns to the Caribbean with 17 ships and 1,200 men, soldiers, priests, farmers, and nobles seeking fortune. This isn't exploration anymore, it's colonization. On November 28th, they reach La Navidad. The fort is burned. All 39 men are dead. Columbus finds their bodies scattered in the jungle, some decomposed beyond recognition. The Taíno killed them. He learns why. His men raped Taíno women, enslaved Taíno men, stole food until villages starved. The Taíno chief, Caonabo, finally attacked, executing every Spaniard. Columbus doesn't see this as justice, he sees it as rebellion. He establishes a new settlement, La Isabela, with 1,200 armed men. This time, there will be no mercy. Columbus implements the encomienda system. Spanish settlers receive land grants. Each grant includes the Taíno people living there. These indigenous people become property. Forced labourers required to mine gold, farm crops, and serve Spanish masters. It's slavery with paperwork. Taíno chiefs who resist are hunted with war dogs, mastiffs trained to kill. Columbus's men burn villages. In his journal, Columbus writes, "They are fit to be ordered about and made to work." The Taíno population on Hispaniola in 1492, approximately 300,000. By 1494, Columbus demands tribute. Every Taíno over 14 must deliver a hawk's bell full of gold dust every 3 months. A hawk's bell. Small, maybe 2 tablespoons of gold. Sounds reasonable, except there isn't that much gold on the island. Taíno who fail to meet the quota have their hands cut off. They're left to bleed to death as a warning. Thousands choose suicide. They eat cassava poison, hang themselves from trees. Mothers kill their children rather than watch them starve under Spanish rule. Bartolomé de las Casas, a Spanish priest who witnesses this, writes, "The Indians were driven to such despair that many killed themselves. Women avoided pregnancy. Some even killed their newborns to spare them Spanish cruelty." By 1496, Columbus realises there's no significant gold in Hispaniola. His investors in Spain are furious. He pivots. If this land won't yield gold, it will yield slaves. He ships 500 Taíno to Spain to be sold in Seville's slave markets. 200 die during the voyage. Queen Isabella, horrified by the slave trade, orders them freed. She didn't finance Columbus to create a slave empire. She wanted Christian converts and trade routes. but Columbus ignores her orders. In Hispaniola, slavery continues. Disease does what swords couldn't. Europeans bring smallpox, influenza, and measles. The Taíno have no immunity. Entire villages disappear within weeks. Bodies pile faster than survivors can bury them. Some estimates suggest 90% of indigenous deaths come not from violence, but from pathogens. By 1500, only 60,000 Taíno remain on Hispaniola. 240,000 dead in just 8 years. But Columbus's ambition isn't satisfied, and his grip on reality is starting to slip. What happens when the conquistador becomes the conquered? Chapter 3. The Fall. Columbus's third voyage discovers the South American mainland, modern-day Venezuela. He sees the Orinoco River's massive freshwater output, concludes he's found the entrance to the Garden of Eden. He's not joking. He writes to Ferdinand and Isabella, "I have found the terrestrial paradise where God placed Adam and Eve." His mental state is deteriorating. Arthritis cripples his hands. Ophthalmia blinds him for weeks at a time. He wears chains voluntarily as penance for his sins, but continues enslaving indigenous people. In Hispaniola, Spanish settlers rebel against Columbus's governance. They accuse him of tyranny, of executing Spaniards for minor crimes while allowing his brothers, Bartholomew and Diego, who he appointed as administrators, to run the colony like a personal dictatorship. Settlers send complaints to Spain. The colony is failing. Promised gold doesn't exist. The governor executes anyone who challenges him. The indigenous population is collapsing. Francisco de Bobadilla arrives in 1500 as a royal investigator. He finds Columbus's rule catastrophic. The colony is starving. Spanish settlers are plotting murder. The Taíno are nearly extinct. Bodies hang from gallows in the town square, left to rot as warnings. Bobadilla arrests Columbus. He's sent back to Spain in chains, actual chains this time. Not voluntary penance, but royal punishment. October 1500, Columbus arrives in Cadiz, shackled, humiliated. The man who claimed to find the Indies is now a prisoner accused of incompetence and brutality. Ferdinand and Isabella remove his governorship. He keeps his titles and wealth, but loses all administrative power. He'll never govern again. Columbus spends his final years writing delusional letters. He claims his discoveries prove biblical prophecy, that his voyages were divinely ordained, that he deserves recognition as the greatest explorer in history. He demands money he thinks Spain owes him, files lawsuits against the crown, becomes obsessed with financing a crusade to retake Jerusalem. He calculates the world will end in 1656, exactly 155 years after his discovery. He writes a book called Book of Prophecies, arguing that his voyages fulfilled scripture. No publisher will print it. May 20th, 1506. Columbus dies in Valladolid, Spain. He's 54 years old, still believing he reached Asia, still demanding money he thinks he's owed, still convinced his discoveries proved he was chosen by God. His death barely makes news. Spain has moved on. Other explorers have proven Columbus found a new world, not Asia. Amerigo Vespucci's voyages and maps give the continents their name, America, not Columbia. His 4 voyages connected 2 worlds that had been separated for 15,000 years. But connection isn't discovery, and discovery isn't destiny. What did Columbus actually accomplish, and what did it cost? Chapter 4. The Reckoning. Columbus's legacy solidifies slowly, yet his son Diego fights legal battles for decades to reclaim governorship of Hispaniola. The crown eventually grants limited concessions, titles and pensions, but not control. Historians begin recognizing the magnitude of 1492, not because Columbus was a genius, but because his accident changed human history forever. Within 100 years of Columbus's landing, 95% of indigenous people in the Americas are dead. Some estimates suggest 50 million people. The largest demographic catastrophe in human history. Entire civilizations erased. The Taíno language, extinct by 1550. Their religion, forgotten. Their descendants, scattered and assimilated. European diseases, slavery and warfare combine into systematic genocide, though Columbus himself never called it that. He called it civilization. Spain called it Christianization. History will eventually call it by its real name. The Columbian Exchange transforms both worlds. European crops, animals and diseases flow to the Americas. Horses, cattle, wheat and smallpox. American crops flow to Europe, potatoes, tomatoes, corn and chocolate. This exchange feeds population booms in Europe and population collapses in the Americas. It enriches empires and destroys kingdoms. It creates the modern world through destruction of the ancient one. Columbus personally enslaved thousands. His governance killed tens of thousands. His voyage enabled the deaths of millions. Yet, for centuries, he was celebrated. Columbus Day became a US federal holiday in 1937. Statues erected in hundreds of cities. Schools named after him. He was taught as a hero, a visionary, a man who discovered a land already inhabited by millions. That narrative is collapsing. In 2021, over 30 US cities replaced Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day. Statues toppled in protests. Historians now teach Columbus as he was: ambitious, delusional, brutal, and consequential. A man whose mathematical incompetence accidentally connected worlds, and whose greed helped destroy one of them. The Taíno people he encountered on October 12, 1492, no longer exist as a distinct culture. Their descendants survive in Caribbean populations, carrying genetic markers and fragments of memory. But their language, their cities, their way of life ended within one generation of Columbus's landing. Columbus wanted gold. He found people. He wanted Asia. He found continents. He wanted glory. He got it, but only because millions died to build his legend. In the end, Columbus didn't discover paradise. And he didn't find Eden. He found a world full of life, beauty, and possibility. And he set in motion its annihilation. The man who promised wealth brought Holocaust. The explorer who swore he'd find the Indies found indigenous people and enslaved them. The navigator who couldn't do basic math miscalculated his way into infamy. The greatest irony? Columbus died believing he'd failed. He never found the Khan, never accessed the Silk Road, never delivered the riches he promised. He died bitter, paranoid, convinced the world owed him recognition he never received. He couldn't see that his failure was actually his success. That missing Asia by 9,000 miles was the most consequential miscalculation in human history. That his incompetence would reshape civilization itself. History remembers Columbus. Textbooks, holidays, and cities bear his name. But history forgets the faces of those Taíno people who greeted him with gifts on that October morning. It forgets their names, their stories, their children who never grew old. Columbus changed the world. Two worlds, actually. One he enriched, one he destroyed, and the world has never forgiven him for it. But Columbus wasn't the first to destroy an empire through deception. 3,000 years earlier, 30 warriors hidden inside wood brought down the most powerful city in the ancient world. One night, one horse, and Troy burned to ashes. Watch what happens when an entire civilization opens its gates to its own destruction.